733% gain, quickest in 48-hour period. So obviously people like what they heard.
Maybe 70% of the 24 holes had reportable mineralisation. We had something which was about 500 metres long, and now it's 1 kilometre long. So people saw space, they saw grade, they saw mineralisation from surface, and I think that's what excited them.
Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. First of all, thanks so much for watching this video. If you like it, give us a thumbs up at the end, it'd be much appreciated. And do leave your comments below. It just helps us understand the sorts of questions you think we should be asking, how you think we've done, and of course what you thought of the company. And if you want to catch this as a podcast, read about it as an article or transcript, go to cruxinvestor.com. And of course, for our early access members on Crux Club, you get to see this video first. Plus, if you haven't already done so, please click the button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, for more videos like this, click the notification bell. We spoke earlier today to Paul Roberts. He's the CEO of Predictive Discovery. They're an Aussie exploration story, which up until about 3 months ago wasn't that interesting. But with the drill results that came out of their Guinea project, the market got quite excited and they've gone from less than 5 million to 50 million overnight. But they have been 10 years in the making. We get into what they were doing during that period, lessons learned from there, which could be applied going forward. They have a project portfolio model, also have a JV with Resolute in Côte d'Ivoire. They're very honest about the project in Burkina Faso and the ability to do mining there, given recent terrorist activities. But they want to focus on Guinea as a project. Numbers look quite good. They've got to build this picture out and sort of see the scale of this project, looking to deliver a JORC compliant resource probably towards the end of next year. So lots discussed, very honest guy. So take a look in the description below at some of the topics we discuss. Anything interests you, click on the number beside that topic. It's called a timestamp, and that jumps you to that part of the video. Otherwise, enjoy what Paul has to say. Paul, how are you doing, sir?
Hi, Matthew. Nice to be here.
Well, great. So you're in Perth, at the office.
I am indeed.
You're back to normal, are you? Apart from the going to Africa bit.
Apart from the bit about going to Africa, yes.
Right, okay. Well, thanks for joining us today. We're going to hear about Predictive Discovery, which is great. First time for us. So why don't you kick off first and give us that 1 minute overview, and then we can pick it up from there.
Okay, well, Predictive is a gold exploration company. We have been operating for over a decade in Francophone West Africa, and we are a greenfields explorer. We have a very large portfolio of projects scattered across 3 countries, and the immediate focus for us right now is the Cote project in Guinea, where we've made a gold discovery.
Fantastic. Now, I've heard you describe yourself as a portfolio company, and you've just used the phrase, greenfield explorer. So I'm interested in understanding, as an investor, I'm interested in understanding what is it that I would be investing into. So can you just expand on your business plan? What are you've been at it 10 years. So, what have you got and how have you got there, and what's the plan going forward?
As I said, we're a greenfields explorer. And the truth is that if you're going to be successful as a greenfields explorer, you can't just have one project. You have to have many projects. So you've got to have, as I say, lots of shots at the title. And so the reason the portfolio exists is to give us lots of shots at the title. And that's essentially how we've got there. I mean, it's certainly true that we started as a single project explorer in Burkina Faso. And when that became too difficult for us, then we expanded our horizons and we took on joint venture partners because obviously you can't have 16 projects and fund all of them. So you need other people to pay and spend quite a lot of the money. And so that's what we've done. But we've always had the weather eye of coming up with a project, ideally a project where you get good results early, where you can take it all the way through to development if necessary. And we seem to be in that phase in our history now. So we have that portfolio, we have the joint ventures, they're generating results. And in Guinea, we decided, and that was in conversation with our shareholders, that we would intentionally not go down the joint venture route in Guinea. And so it's different in that respect. We'd pick up projects which are either 100% from the get-go, which is what Cote is, or projects where we could do a deal so we could get 100%. And certainly we were looking to get the kind of success that we've had, or we appear to have had, and enable us to take the project all the way through. One other thing I might say, and it is important to our game plan, is I'm a geologist, and I'm very happy to be a greenfields explorer. I'm very happy that we've made discoveries along the way, and particularly this Coninco discovery. But I'm not a mine developer, and so that doesn't mean to say that this project is for sale. What it means to say is that as a company, should this project go all the way through successfully to feasibility study and beyond, I'm not going to be the chief executive. I'm not going to build the mine. To be honest, I think, and there are honourable exceptions, I don't think geologists build the best mines. And so we would bring in a mining engineer, I would step aside and do my geology thing, and we get someone who really knows how to build a mine to build the mine.
Okay, so you know who you are, so that's good. Some people don't, so that's not bad. But let's talk about the last 10 years. I want to see what you've learned along the way, because obviously you saw a massive peak in share price late 16 through 17, and then it kind of sort of dwindled down to quite a low level in 19 and pretty much most of last year. I'm interested in what you learned along that way, because you described quite a good story about what you want to be and what you should and shouldn't be in terms of shouldn't be single asset, you should have a portfolio approach, you should JV, and of course, develop your own asset. So what happened back then? Why did you change tack? What did you learn?
Well, to answer the question about why we changed tack, we changed tack to stay alive. So we started off in 2010. We had a group of projects in Burkina Faso. We had success, but we didn't have enough success. We lost momentum on that project. And as a consequence, we had to do something else. We had to operate at lower overheads. And of course, we fell into the joint ventures. We went down the road of being a prospect generator for a while, which actually was a suitable tactic, if you like, during that period when the market was very quiet and very difficult, because we continued to generate news flow and good results. But what became clear to us through that was that at least on the ASX, it's a bit different on the TSXV, but at least on the ASX, we needed to have 100% projects. So I learned a few things along the way. The first thing in Burkina Faso, I learned that you can't persist too long with a project. And the reality is we stuck at it for too long. Not an easy project, plenty of mineralisation there, but multi-pit opportunity, lots of money has to be spent, some continuity problems in some of the ore deposits. So all quite difficult. So you've got to be cold, you've got to cut, you've got to walk away, or at the very least, you've got to get a partner in and let them spend the money rather than spend it yourself. And we took too long to get to that point. The lesson that we also learned was that you've got to be very careful with your money, kind of whatever happens. Now, we all know that, but you have to be, broken a little bit by events to understand what that really means. And so we've learned how to be very lean. And the third thing that we learned is what I said, is that we needed to have a 100% project. We needed that to get traction on the ASX. The reality was that we got that run in 2016. We got the other one in 2019. We were minority holders. They're not sustainable rises. And they're not sustainable rises for two reasons. The first is that if you've got a minority interest, people are less interested. And the second reason is if you're in joint venture, in almost all cases, the pace of news flow is not the pace of news flow you need to sustain the push. Now that we're in Guinea, we've got a project, we can sustain the rate of news flow, we're in a far better position.
Okay. Again, honest response. It feels to me it's a case of you've learned on someone else's dime, but I'm interested in you taking those things forward, those learnings forward, and seeing what you're going to do with this new setup. Okay, so You're in Guinea, and we want to talk about that. That's the drive of this conversation. I think this is what we should be focused on. But you've got some stuff going on in Côte d'Ivoire and Burkina Faso as well. Let's get those out of the way. So Burkina Faso, what's happening in Burkina Faso? Slightly exciting times in country. We've got stories of terrorist incursions, whether they actually be criminal enterprise or terrorism. We no one knows, but some companies have been affected. We talked about Semaphos and deaths last year, huge displacement of peoples. At the same time, we've spoken to lots of companies here in Burkina Faso doing just fine, business as usual. So what's your interpretation of what's going on in Burkina Faso?
Well, it's variable depending on where you are. Our projects are in North-East Burkina Faso. And so North-East Burkina Faso is where there have been a number of incidents. And indeed, when you say either they're terrorists, are they bandits, they're both. So, in fact, quite often they're bandits who become terrorists. So, you can pick what you choose, really. So the issue for us, there's a couple of issues for us in North-East Burkina Faso. The first is that we're not at a development phase. And so if you want to do the earlier stage exploration, you get into a problem of how much security you've got to supply to your people to do that work. Also, the security situation across our tenement package, which actually runs over 100 kilometres of strike from the Niger border down towards the Golden Rim property, is different. So up in the northeast, not possible to work. Further to the southwest, yes, possible to work, but you've got to have a high tolerance to physical risk, and you have to have a plan. And really, in my view, what you need to do is you've got to have a plan to take that project, some very nice mineralisation in there, and put it on the critical path towards turning to a mine as quickly as you can, because once you have a mining operation, you can secure it. So right far up in the northeast, you've got Essakane, the most at-risk location in the country, operating, never stopped operating. Yes, we had a problem with Bungu to the south of us, also quite close to the Niger border. But, and clearly there was a dreadful incident that occurred with them, but the fact is that they're still operating. So it's certainly possible to operate in Burkina Faso, but you've got to think about that early stage exploration, particularly in that northeastern part of the country where there is more terrorist activity than there has been in other places. So right now, to answer your question, what's happening there? Right, we're not doing any work right now. We're in conversation with our joint venture partner about where to take it next. I do believe this is a project that has a place within a future mine development, but I also think that it needs to be a company that's got the tolerance for that kind of physical risk. And for us, we have much better, much safer fishes to fry in other places.
Okay, so would you say there's zero value attributed to your Burkina Faso asset, and I guess at the same time minimal outlay to kind of keep it ticking over in terms of licenses, permits, and so forth?
Yeah, the market attributes no value to that project. I think there is intrinsic value in it. So there's a divergence between those two things.
But not on your balance sheet? No. Okay. It could be worth something at some point in the future, depending on how things pan out. That's fine. That's fair enough. Let's talk about Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, as people used to call it. What's happening there? Right.
So the activity that's going on there right now is on the Bundiali project, which is one of the joint venture projects with Resolute Mining.
Yeah.
And there is a discovery that was made in 2016 at the Nyangui prospect. And we had a 6 kilometre long soil anomaly. We drilled 2 kilometres of it. We got some very nice results, some very high grades in places. And we've defined mineralisation of about 1 kilometre. And as it stands, not 1 million ounces. Potentially, if you can take it to depth, you might be able to get there. But the work that hasn't been done is to explore the 4 kilometres to the north, and that's what's happening right now.
Okay.
So there's air core drilling, there's power auger drilling, there's some drilling to the south as well, and that's what Resolute's doing. So they're actively working away on that, and I'm hoping to see some news out of that over the next 1 or 2 months.
Okay.
And then the other project, the other Resolute project, is Whakasadugu North. And there we have the Warragee South Discovery. Forgive me for the complicated names. And there's it's actually quite an interesting body. In fact, I think it's the most interesting body that we've found in Côte d'Ivoire so far. It's a bit strike limited. It's quite fat. We've drilled it. We announced some good drill results, up to 50-metre widths on the 16th of April, just the day after we announced the Guinea results. And the thing continues down to depth. We've drilled it to about 180 metres vertical. But the thing that's most interesting about it is that it's a granite-hosted body in a zone of anomalies that runs for 17 kilometres. And there's a 10-kilometre section there which is directly along strike, appears to be on a structure which is seeing essentially no drilling at all. So there's a real possibility of finding more of these bodies, and then I think that we'd have a really interesting project.
Okay, so talk to me about the relationship with Resolute, because again, many companies that we talk to who bring in JV partners who are big, of certain size, and Resolute's getting up to that $1 billion level. There are some projects which interest them more than others, and the terms of the agreement in terms of spend, the time, how quickly they've got to spend that, what they've got to do, and they've got the option of exiting at any point. With the you're straight talking guys. So with the conversations that you're having with Resolute, is what they're seeing interesting enough to kind of keep them there and keep spending money and keep that JV in place?
Well, certainly it is for the next 12 months, and this is exploration. So they're very committed to the current program that we're on, and we certainly expect them to go back to Whakasadugu North and do more. They're not doing anything right now. We're running up into the rainy season. I expect that they'll be back there before Christmas, and I expect that they'll be continuing to do work. Equally with Bundiali, there's unfinished business there, no doubt, and they're interested in doing that work. And in terms of their greenfields exploration investment, I would have thought that this is the largest greenfields investment they've got. So right now they're very committed to it. I would have thought, and I don't want to verbal them, but I would have thought that if they can't see something like a couple of million ounces in a project, then they're likely to step back. And then, of course, we'll have a conversation, and it may be that we'll try and get the project back from them because something of a smaller scale might be of interest to us when it's not of interest to them, but that's off in the future.
Yeah, I think it's the way these things play out typically. So, but you think that couple of million ounce thing is their threshold for moving forward or not? That's interesting. And so, remind me the obligations in terms of the amount of money they've got to spend during this 12-month period.
Well, in fact, the joint venture has been formed. It's been formed for a number of years. We are a contributing partner at this point, so it's either contribute or dilute. We have a 23.5% equity. And so it means that the call on Treasury isn't too great. We have the opportunity every 6 months to decide whether we're going to contribute in the program that's presented to us every 6 months, and we will be seeing another program presented to us early July, and then we will have to make a choice as to whether we want to commit to contributing to that or not. And that will be entirely on the basis of how excited we are by that particular project and what we see as the opportunity.
But you've been diluting so far along that relationship.
We diluted up until the end of June. Well, we've contributed partly, we've diluted partly. So we had a dilution phase that ended in June last year, and we're now in a contribution phase since July 1, taking us through to the end of this month, and then we'll make a choice.
Okay, and what sort of money would you be obliged to, if you decide to continue, would you be obliged to spend?
Well, I mean, there's two parts to that question. Firstly, there are some contributions that we have to make because billing has come quite late, and we're probably talking over the current 12-month period of something a bit shy of $1 million, and then going forward, I'm not sure. It depends what budget they present, and I haven't got that budget, so I can't comment.
No, I just wanted to know what you knew today, because obviously, and we're going to talk about Guinea in a second, you've got some big choices there, because from your drill results, I suspect you like what you see in Guinea, and you decided to be 100% on that. So, okay, so that relationship's ongoing, and we'll get updates during the year. Again, same question, do you think the market's attributing much value to that?
I would say overall it's not. And that's clear, because obviously we were sitting on a very low market capitalisation, and all of that was there. However, the market has changed because people are now much more interested in predictive, and there are some people on our register who attribute value to that joint venture, and some who don't. I mean, obviously there's a new crop of investors, and some of them really like the portfolio approach and understand that there's more opportunity. So in a way, the Guinea discovery actually adds value to the rest of the portfolio in some way.
Okay, fine. And it's worth sort of saying you have both in Burkina and Cote d'Ivoire, you have various options in terms of other permits and JVs, but they're not significant, but they could be worth something at some point, depending on how you choose to monetize those. We'll come back to them. Right, okay. Correct. So let's talk about the thing we're here to talk about, which is what's been going on in Guinea. The market got very, very excited with some drill results recently. So this year, around the time of, people feeling all doom and gloom about COVID-19, you put out some results, and you saw, I said in your presentation, 733% gain, quickest in 48-hour period. So obviously people like what they heard very quickly, and obviously then it's settled down a bit since then. So why don't you tell us about what those results were, what you think you've got, what you understand of what you've got today?
Okay, so I mean, what the results were, and the thing that was surprising about them, and I think that the reason the market liked them, is that we got some high-grade intercepts. And also that most of the drill holes that we reported, and we reported 24 holes, were mineralised. So in terms of reportable intercepts, probably 70, 80% or maybe 70% of every hole, or rather the 24 holes, had reportable mineralisation now. So, which is a pretty remarkable result. And what it was telling us was that we had something that could actually produce some quite high grades, that a number of these holes started mineralisation, a number of holes stopped mineralisation, some holes were mineralised the whole length, and for the most part, we didn't test the whole of our target, so the mineralisation's open to the east, it's open to the west, it's open to the north, it's open to the south, it's open to depth. So and on these sections you see mineralisation as much as 150 metres width, and we don't know what the full width extent is. And that's in the context of a bedrock anomaly from power auger drilling, which is up to 300 metres wide. So it looks like something which is large. And of course it's open to the north and south. And subsequently, we've reported power auger drilling, and we had something which was about 500 metres long, and now it's 1 kilometre long. And then on the northernmost line, we got one of the best hits we got out of power auger. So it looks as if it's open to the north, and indeed, in my opinion, it's open to the south as well. So people saw space, they saw grade, they saw mineralisation from surface, and I think that's what excited.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because most people associate with that part of West Africa with the Birimian, green belt, greenstone belt. But those are 1 to 4 gram type levels. I think we've maybe Rock's gold are sort of 8 to 10 in places. You were hitting numbers bigger than that. Is that unusual for the area, or very common? Well,
I think the thing is, for the Birimian, you have everything. Right, and wherever you go, you have everything. So people quite often, and I remember an investor coming up to me and saying, "I don't want to invest in Burkina Faso because everything's low grade there." Well, it's a meaningless comment. It's an enormous orogenic gold belt. It contains very high grades. You have a Boissy, one of the great ore bodies of the world, with very high grades. You have Yaramoko, and so you have high grades and low grades. In terms of what we've got, so far, we've got both. But the point that I emphasise is, and this is particularly because when I reported the grades, I reported them at a quarter gram cutoff. And so I included in the reportable grades are grades of holes which have maybe 50 metres of 0.5 to 1 gram. And of course, that begs the question as to whether that works. And certainly for these kinds of deposits, it does. And the classic example is Siguiri. So Siguiri has been operating for a long time. It's operated by Anglo Gold. It hasn't operated for any significant period of time with a head grade of above 1 gram. And so the question is, well, why is that? And the answer is because Siguiri has, and Leifa too, which is a North Gold operation, they benefit from having these very broad zones of quite thick oxide mineralisation. And when you have those broad zones of oxide mineralisation, when I'm talking about oxide, I'm talking about soft saprolite. So soft saprolite is basically clay rock. In most cases, you could take an excavator in, apart from the very top laterite layer, which is a bit hard, take an excavator and dig it up. But also you get other benefits. So when you start from surface, it means you don't have a waste strip to worry about. When you've got something which is a couple of 100 metres wide, and within it there's very little waste, your waste-to-ore ratio is negligible. I mean, it's so small compared with what you see normally. Because you're in oxide and you have quite a good thickness of oxide, you get very good recoveries. And then when you put it into a mill, in the first phase of a mill, you've got very soft material, so the energy costs are very low. So you can mine these things at sub 1 gram. 2019, for example, Anglo Gold at Siguiri, their recovered head grade was 0.75 grams a tonne. And if you have a look at the ratio of their hard rock and their oxide reserves, most of what they put through, they don't say, but most of what they put through was probably hard rock. Now, how can you possibly run a hard rock mine at 0.75 grams a tonne? Well, it's all about what that broad zone gives you in terms of strip ratio. So if you've got something that's a couple of 100 metres wide and it's all been ore, then you can take your pit down a couple of 100 metres, and a lot of what will be waste strip for other people is not waste strip for you. So it's those benefits. So, in the long run, do I expect this to be a 10 gram deposit? No. But do I expect it to have very good economics? If we continue to find the kind of material that we've got, I think it's going to have a tremendous start, which will, of course, pay back a lot of capital.
Okay. How much cash have you got?
10 million Aussie.
Got 10 million. So you did a raise recently in May. Is that right? Was it May or was it June?
Oh, well, it's just completed.
Completed,
okay.
June.
Yeah,
okay,
so completed on the 16th of June, yeah.
Got it, okay. And you'd raised 2 million prior to that. How much have you raised in total in your 10 years?
To be honest, I couldn't answer that question, but it would be, it would probably be $30 to $40 million.
Right, okay. And obviously recently things have picked up. You're around 53, 54 million Aussie as of the last 2-3 months, which is great. What do you think is going to happen with long suffering shareholders? You have this peak. You went up to 16, 17 cents. Are you worried about an overhang on the shares? People selling? Are you going to be allowed to grow? Are you going to have the chance to breathe and develop this project, or are people going to be constantly selling down? Because I noticed ARM recently sold some stock that didn't help you, kind of had a negative effect. How do you counter that?
Well, to be honest, I think that a lot of the tired sellers have gone. And that's because the turnover in the stock has been mind-bogglingly large, frankly. And even over the last week, we've seen trades of 30 to 40 million shares a day. So, yes, certainly Aurora sold part of their holding. To be honest, what surprised me was just how well the market absorbed it. Yes, there was a drop, and particularly when the market saw that Aurora had sold some of their shares, clearly people started to worry there was an overhang. But in reality, over the last few days, we've seen quite a lot of that wash through. And indeed, I would think that the bit of weakness was associated with the finalisation of the financing, and that's simply because people were issued stock at 5 cents and it was trading at 7 to 8 cents, and so obviously people are taking profits. But that's not tied holders. A lot of the tied holders went in that first flush of liquidity, which was enormous. Okay. So, right now, I mean, we closed today above 8 cents. And, I think that's actually a remarkably good result.
Yeah, it seems to be. It's all kind of new, in the flush of youth. There were this new look company, new plan company. It all helps when the market cap's there and people are excited. What are you going to do with your $9 million? Where's that being spent? Clearly, you've said to me nothing in Burkina Faso, unlikely to have spent too much in Côte d'Ivoire. So what's the money actually going on?
Well, there'll be a little bit of money spent in Burkina Faso. There is money being spent in Côte d'Ivoire, and we have to make choices on that every 6 months. But the bulk of money, of course, is going to go in Guinea, and the bulk of that will go on Kaninko. And so we've laid out a program. It's very clear. It's quite simple to grow Kaninko as quickly as we can, and it has 3 components. One component is power auger. Power auger, we're drilling holes. A post hole digger can drill down to 20 meters, and we found North-East Burkina with that, and so we're just continuing to use that to increase the footprint. So we're interested in that 1/4 gram footprint because that encapsulates or appears to encapsulate the mineralisation that lies underneath. And so we've allocated 20,000 metres of power auger drilling, and that's a very active program now. And has been, obviously, it's been a long strike from North-East Burkina. There's more that we just announced the other day, which goes a little bit further to the north in the Saman permit, and we're looking forward to seeing results from that. We've also drilled to the south of there, and by the time we're done there, we'll have drilled a couple of kilometres to the south of there. And then over in the west of the property, we're looking for more. So we're hoping to have a much bigger footprint of oxide mineralisation. That's the first thing. The second is the RC. Currently, the RC is drilling quite shallow. It's not as shallow. So, the early drilling was just the power augers to 20 metres. The air core was to 38 metres. The RC is now to 76 metres. And the purpose of that is to define this oxide mineralisation. It is the low-hanging fruit. The more oxide mineralisation we've got, the more attractive this property becomes. And then, of course, the third component is diamond drilling. In the medium term, and when I say the medium term, I'm talking about the next 3 to 6 months, it'll be combined RC and diamond drilling. But right now, we've got a diamond drill rig there working away. And all that it's doing for us is helping us understand what this beast is underneath. So we're drilling holes a couple of different directions at various parts of the body that we know of. We're looking at the geology underneath. We're drilling, and we've drilled a couple of close holes relatively close together so that we can see what the 3D disposition is of these granitic intrusions, all to help us guide us how to drill this at greater depth, and to give us a bit of an idea of what grade does as you go through that oxide primary transition. So that's what we're doing now. We're in terms of the RC and diamond drilling, we're expecting to drill 8 to 10,000 metres over the next 2 months. So not too fast. And I don't want to go too fast at this point because I want to understand the body.
So you talked earlier about lessons learned from the previous 10 years and keeping costs down as one of them. And I assume you're remembering that and using that learning here. But how do you go about planning the type of drilling that you need to do? You're a geologist, right? You said you're not a market guy per se, right? So are you getting excited about the geology, or what do you think, or how do you think you need to talk to the market to get them to continue to be excited? Because in effect, you're back to being a single asset company in a way, because you're focused on what you've got. So how do you keep the market excited, given again your learnings from previous? And what help are you getting? Because I know you've got a couple of non-execs there, but are they advising you on how to go about doing this, or are you just focusing on it from a pure geological perspective, trying to understand what you've got in the ground?
Well, I do both. I mean, I'm the only managing director that Predictive's had, and so obviously I've done plenty of marketing, and
But that hasn't gone well. My point is that hasn't gone well up until the last 2 or 3 months when you've hit the numbers. The grades have delivered that for you. So, and you've talked about in the past not being able to sustain the excitement of the story in the market. So again, taking those learnings, what are you going to do different this time?
The first thing is it's 100% owned project. Second thing is that we've got quite a lot of money in the bank, and we have a program that's going to deliver continuous news flow for the next 6 months. So the news flow is the critical element. And when you're in joint ventures, you don't control the news flow. When you're 100% project, you do. So, I mean, that is the most important part of this. And we are dependent on having good results. If we don't have good results, well, that's a hard world, right? But we're very optimistic that we're going to get good results.
But I'm focused on it's the type of news flow that's important, right? How are you deciding? What's the plan? How are you going to spend your money and your time and attribute your team's resources to certain things rather than others to make sure that the market's hearing the sorts of noises it needs to, whilst at the same time allowing you to deliver the process in the way that you think you should deliver it? So I'm interested in that thought process, because a lot of small explorers suffer from the same issue. So I want to understand what your solution is.
Oh, okay. Well, of course, beyond news flow, you have to build a picture in people's minds of how this beast is growing. So there's got to be a visual element of it. I mean, obviously, as a geologist, you think in 3 dimensions. Most people don't. But what you've got to do is you've got to get that story across. Is as you expand it at surface, as you expand it at depth, this is growing from something which is like this to something that's like that, hopefully. And when people can see it, then it becomes, before we calculate a resource, because we won't calculate a resource until next year, and we promise the market that we're going to calculate a JORC resource by mid next year. But what people have got to do is they've got to get this vision in their mind of how they can see that this is bigger than it was before and it's continually growing, and an idea of the grade distribution within it. So that's the fundamental, really.
Okay.
That sense of scale.
Okay, no, that's interesting. Because again, if you look at the different business models, we've talked about rocks, gold in there. You've said you're not going to be a mine builder or a producer. That's not where your core skill or what you want to do.
I'm talking about me. I'm not talking about predictive.
Okay, gotcha.
Predictive will be the company it needs to be to deliver value to its shareholders. What I'm saying is, I know what my limitations are, and my task is to deliver an ore body. And we need over time, and indeed within the board, we will undoubtedly build skills within the management team so we can make that transition to a project team, and finally a mine operating team. We'll make that smooth transition, and I'm not going to stand in the way of it. I'm going to do what I can do, which is I can take it through a feasibility, no problem whatsoever. But beyond that, we need to be sure that we've done the succession planning so that we can get to the prize for everybody, which is a profitable operating mine.
How many shares do you own?
I've got 5.5 million shares. 5.5
million shares. So that's right. Okay. Bought in the open market.
All. So I've contributed. I mean, in the current rights issue, I was absolutely limited to my rights. Directors are the only people who couldn't actually oversubscribe because you're not allowed to under the rules. So I would have taken more if I could. And I bought on market, and I've contributed to rights issues and placements.
Right, okay. So this new money coming in, is everyone getting a pay rise?
Well, no one has got a pay rise at this point. So we're just focusing on getting on with the job at this point. Yeah.
Okay, great. And so one last question. So who are the main shareholders? And you've got 636 million shares out at the moment. Standard Aussie performance there, lots of shares. So who are the big names that we'd recognise?
Well, actually, it's over 800 million.
Of course, with the new issue. Sorry.
Now that the finance has been complete.
Yeah.
I thought you might ask me this question. The truth is that there aren't very many people over the 5% level, and there's certainly the capital raising has increased the institutional shareholding in the company, but without asking the permission of those people, because they don't have to be identified, I'm not going to say who they are. So who's there who is visible or are visible are Capital Drilling or Capital DI, and they've supported us over the last couple of years now, and been involved in a number of financings, and they're a very supportive shareholder, and I think they've done quite well out of it, which is I'm pleased. And then apart from that, there's Lowell Resources Fund, so it's a small listed fund based in Melbourne, and they also have done very well, and so they've been enduring shareholders. And then obviously there was Aurora, but Aurora's position is a lot smaller now. And then apart from that, there's HBC nominees, which are obviously a number of groups. And then there are a number of institutional shareholders. There are quite well-known names who've joined us, but until such time as they give me permission to say who they are, I can't say.
Okay. So what's the point that you need to get to attract more institutional shareholders on board? Because right now you're pretty much an Aussie explorer retail story, which has its pros and its cons, but there's a point at which it's advisable to try and get more institutions on the books. So when do you think that moment is, and what do you think you need to deliver to be able to get more institutional investors on board?
I would say a platform of evaluation is a resource accompanied by a strong metallurgical test work program, and we're doing both of those things. So that is the platform. But there are institutional investors who come in earlier. And so the truth is, every hole we drill at depth that produces good results, every expansion of that oxide potential, we're on plenty of people's radar. And little by little, I think that we'll see more people coming on board as we build the picture of the volume of this body. But once we get to the point that we've delivered subject to it being large enough, of course, a JORC resource with the metallurgical test work, what you've got then, as long as the information's all out there, people can start thinking then about those critical questions that will determine how valuable this thing could be. And then I think we'll see a lot more.
So middle of next year, to your timing.
Middle of next year is the target.
Yeah.
If we can do it early, we will. But of course, you have to accept that resource when you're doing drill outs. Things can become complicated. There's bits of the geology you don't understand. You might have to drill some holes in a different direction and so on. You've got to allow for all of those things, and that's why I think the middle of next year is a good timeline to aim for.
Okay, well, it gives you a time to kind of build up relationships with them between now and then, because I guess there haven't been too many coming through the door coming through the door at all for a while. You've got to get them to understand the story, get relationship with them, and show them that your strategy is working. Paul, thank you very much for your time today. Exciting story. Do stay in touch. Pick up the phone when there's news. I'd like to see how things are progressing. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Matthew.